Question 1. During an emergency response where multiple areas are impacted, a local government enacts emergency measures that disproportionately restrict the mobility of individuals with disabilities, citing public safety concerns. Under Aomenta for the Americans with Disabilities Act (EDA), which of the following statements best describes the legal obligations of the government in ensuring accessibility during emergency measures? A. The government may lawfully restrict the movement of individuals with disabilities if public safety is at risk, even if no reasonable accommodations are made. B. The government must ensure that emergency measures provide reasonable modifications to avoid discrimination against individuals with disabilities, unless doing so would fundamentally alter the nature of the response. C. Individuals with disabilities are entitled to unrestricted mobility at all times, even in declared emergencies, and cannot be subjected to movement restrictions under any circumstances. D. Determinant of the D does not apply during emergency situations, as public safety measures take precedence over disability rights. Answer. B. The government must ensure that emergency measures provide reasonable modifications to avoid discrimination against individuals with disabilities, unless doing so would fundamentally alter the nature of the response. Explanation. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA), state and local governments must ensure that their programs, services, and activities are accessible to individuals with disabilities, including emergencies. The government cannot impose blanket restrictions on individuals with disabilities without considering reasonable modifications. Option is incorrect. While public safety concerns can justify certain restrictions, Aomn 2 requires reasonable modifications unless they would create an undue burden or fundamentally alter the nature of the emergency response. The government must take steps to accommodate individuals with disabilities in its emergency response efforts. Option B correct. This accurately reflects the reasonable modification standard under the ADA. Emergency measures must be designed to accommodate individuals with disabilities, unless doing so would fundamentally alter the response. For instance, if an emergency evacuation plan restricts wheelchair users from using accessible exits, the government must provide alternative means of evacuation. Option C incorrect. The ADA does not grant absolute mobility rights in all situations. Governments can impose movement restrictions in emergencies, but they must consider the rights of individuals with disabilities and implement reasonable accommodations. Option D incorrect. Aomn of the IDA remains applicable during emergencies, and public entities must continue to ensure accessibility. Courts have ruled that emergency responses must consider disability rights, as seen in cases where governments failed to provide accessible emergency shelters or evacuation plans. Question 2. In a situation where formal requirements conflict with practical accessibility needs, a state-funded university designs its new lecture hall to meet the minimum accessibility standards under the Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA) and the Architectural Barriers Act (ABAP). However, students with disabilities report that while the hall technically complies with accessibility guidelines, barriers such as inadequate sight lines for wheelchair use, poor acoustics for students with hearing impairments, and inaccessible emergency exits still make full participation difficult. Which of the following best describes the legal obligations of the university under federal disability law? A. The university has met its legal obligations by adhering to minimum accessibility standards, and no further modifications are required. B. The university must conduct an individualized assessment and implement reasonable modifications to ensure full accessibility unless it imposes an undue burden. C. As a publicly funded institution, the university is exempt from providing additional accommodations beyond physical accessibility. B. The ADA only requires compliance with construction codes, and complaints about usability do not trigger additional obligations. Answer. B. The university must conduct an individualized assessment and implement reasonable modifications to ensure full accessibility unless it imposes an undue burden. Explanation. Under Aomn for the Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA) and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504, public entities, including state-funded universities, must ensure that individuals with disabilities have equal access to programs, services, and activities. Meeting minimum construction standards does not automatically satisfy this requirement if other barriers still impede participation. Optional incorrect. Compliance with construction codes does not necessarily equate to compliance with the ADA. Courts have ruled that facilities must be functionally accessible, not just technically compliant. Option B correct. The university must go beyond minimum physical accessibility standards and make reasonable modifications to address usability issues. If students with disabilities face barriers to full participation, the university must provide additional accommodations, such as improved seating arrangements, assistive listening devices, or modifications to emergency exit plans. Option C, incorrect. Public institutions receiving federal funding are explicitly covered by the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which prohibits discrimination based on disability. They must provide meaningful access beyond just physical compliance. Option D, incorrect. The ADA requires more than compliance with building codes. It mandates equal opportunity and effective communication. If a student with a disability cannot fully participate, the university may be in violation of federal law. Question 3. During a critical transition period where existing processes are being updated to meet new regulatory requirements, a public transportation agency is revising its policies for accommodating passengers with disabilities. While it plans to upgrade its bus fleet with wheelchair-accessible vehicles, it argues that retrofitting existing buses with ramps is too costly and therefore unnecessary. Several disability rights groups file asserting that the agency is in violation of federal law. What is the agency's legal obligation under the ADA? A. The agency must provide reasonable modifications, such as alternative transportation methods, if retrofitting all buses is an undue burden. B. The agency is only required to ensure that new buses are accessible and has no obligation to modify its existing fleet. C. Since the upgrades are financially burdensome, the agency is exempt from making accessibility changes to any vehicles. D. The ADA mandates that all buses, regardless age, be immediately retrofitted with accessibility features. Answer A. The agency must provide reasonable modifications, such as alternative transportation methods, if retrofitting all buses is an undue burden. Explanation. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA), public transportation agencies must provide accessible services to individuals with disabilities. However, if modifying existing buses creates an undue financial or administrative burden, reasonable alternatives must be offered. Option is correct. The ADA allows flexibility in how accessibility is achieved. If retrofitting is too costly, the agency may implement alternative measures such as paratransit services. Option B, incorrect. The ADA does not limit accessibility requirements to new vehicles. Agencies must take steps to progressively improve access. Option C, incorrect. Cost concerns do not exempt an agency from ADA compliance. Courts have ruled that financial hardship does not justify denying access. Option D, incorrect. While the ADA encourages full accessibility, immediate compliance for all existing buses is not required if alternative services are available. Relevant law. 42 U.S.C. SS 12142, Data Ailment, Public Transportation Accessibility, Department of Transportation. ADA Regulations 49 CFR, Part 37 Precedent Case. Ability Center of Greater Toledo v. Sandusky Transit, 2001. Question 4. In a high-stakes environment where multiple challenges arise, a private employer with 200 employees enforces a strict work schedule that requires all staff to be physically present from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. An employee with a mobility-related disability requests a later start time due to transportation limitations. The employer denies the request, arguing that adhering to the strict schedule is essential for operate consistency. What does the ADA say about this situation? A. The employer is justified in refusing the request because it is a private company with the right to enforce uniform work schedules. B. The employer must consider the request and determine whether a later start time is a reasonable accommodation under the ADA. C. The employer is only obligated to offer accommodations if the employee works for a government entity. D. The ADA allows for schedule adjustments only in workplaces with 50 or more employees. Answer B. The employer must consider the request and determine whether a later start time is a reasonable accommodation under the ADA. Explanation. The Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA) Title I requires employers with 15 or more employees to provide reasonable accommodations unless doing so creates an undue hardship. Optional incorrect. Even private employers must comply with the ADA and consider flexible scheduling as a reasonable accommodation. Option B correct. The employer must engage in an interactive process to assess whether adjusting the work schedule imposes an undue hardship. Option C incorrect. The ADA applies to both private and public employers with 15 or more employees. Option D, incorrect. There is no 50-employee threshold for ADA compliance. The requirement applies at 15 employees. Relevant law: 42 U.S.C. SS 12112, ADA Title I, Employment Discrimination and Accommodations, EOC Enforcement Guidance on Reasonable Accommodation and Undue Hardship. Question 5. While investigating a complicated issue between different regulatory agencies, a state government proposes new zoning laws that limit the number of group homes for individuals with disabilities in residential neighborhoods. The justification is that too many such homes could change the character of single-family areas. Disability advocates argue that this policy violates federal housing protections. What law governs this dispute? A. The Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA) Title for B. The Fair Housing Act FHA C. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504. D. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act (IDEA). Answer: B. The Fair Housing Act FHA. Explanation: The Fair Housing Act FHA prohibits housing discrimination, including zoning policies that unfairly restrict housing options for individuals with disabilities. Option incorrect. Editorial Roman Ravens Public Accommodations, not zoning laws. Option B correct. The FHA 42 U.S.C. SS 3601 et seq. prohibits discriminatory housing policies. Courts have ruled that restricting group homes based on disability status violates the law. Option C incorrect. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act applies to federally funded programs but does not directly regulate zoning laws. Option D incorrect. IDEA governs educational accommodations, not housing policies. Relevant law: 42 U.S.C. SS 3604 F. Fair Housing Act. Disability Protections. Case precedent: City of Edmonds v. Oxford House Inc. 1995. Question 6. When developing a solution that must address opposing needs, an employer faces a conflict between an employee's need for disability accommodations and another employee's claim that the accommodations create an unfair workload. How should the employer proceed under the ADA? A. The employer must balance both employees' concerns equally and may deny the accommodation if it impacts coworkers. B. The ADA prioritizes the employee with the disability, requiring reasonable accommodations unless undue hardship is proven. C. The employer can reject any accommodation that other employees find unfair. D. The ADA does not apply if coworkers object to an accommodation. Answer: B. The ADA prioritizes the employee with the disability, requiring reasonable accommodations unless undue hardship is proven. Explanation: The ADA mandates that employers provide reasonable accommodations without requiring approval from other employees. Option incorrect. The ADA does not balance accommodations against coworker preferences. Undue hardship must be demonstrated. Option B correct. Accommodations must be provided unless they impose an undue burden on the employer. Option C incorrect. Employee objections do not override legal obligations under the ADA. Option D incorrect. The ADA applies regardless of coworker concerns. Relevant law: 42 U.S.C. SS 12112 B5A ADA Reasonable Accommodation Standard. Question 7. Faced with an unprecedented increase in remote work requests due to an ongoing public health crisis, a federal agency updates its policies to limit telework options. An employee with a documented disability who had been teleworking successfully for over a year is now required to return to the office full-time. The employee requests continued telework as a reasonable accommodation under the ADA. What is the employer's legal obligation? A. The employer must allow the employee to continue teleworking since they are able to perform essential job functions remotely. B. The employer has the right to revoke telework accommodations at any time, regardless of the employee's disability. C. The employer can deny the request if it applies the same policy to all employees without considering individual accommodations. D. The employer is only required to grant telework accommodations. Disabilities explicitly listed in the ADA statute. Answer: A. The employer must allow the employee to continue teleworking since they were able to perform essential job functions remotely. Explanation: Under ADA Title I, an employer must engage in the interactive process and cannot arbitrarily revoke a reasonable accommodation that has been effective. Option is all correct. Courts have ruled that if an employee successfully teleworked and performed essential job duties, denying continued telework could be discriminatory. Gibson v. Tower City 2021. Option B incorrect. Employers must evaluate each request individually rather than applying blanket denials. Option C incorrect. ADA protections require case-by-case assessment. A uniform policy is not a legal defense. Option D incorrect. The ADA does not have a fixed list of disabilities requiring accommodation. Relevant law 42 U.S.C. SS 12112b5a ADA reasonable accommodation requirement EOC guidance on teleworkers reasonable accommodation. Question 8. As part of an ongoing effort to expand equal access to higher education, a university implements new policies requiring all students to submit assignments exclusively through an online platform. A student with a visual impairment requests an alternative submission method due to the platform's incompatibility with screen readers. How must the university respond under federal disability laws? A. The university must provide an accessible alternative, unless doing so would fundamentally alter the course. B. The university can deny the request if it treats all students equally without exceptions. C. The student must independently find way to adapt without expecting institutional changes. D. The university is only required to accommodate disabilities that are evident without documentation. Correct answer A. Answer A. The university must provide an accessible alternative, unless doing so would fundamentally alter the course. Explanation. Under Title Omentavdid and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, universities must ensure digital accessibility and offer reasonable accommodations. Options are correct. The university must either modify the platform or allow an alternative submission method. Option B incorrect. Equal treatment without accommodation can still constitute discrimination under the ADA. Option C incorrect. The burden is on the institution, not the student, to ensure accessibility. Option D incorrect. Institutions must consider all documented disabilities, whether visible or not. Relevant law 29 U.S.C. SS 794 Rehabilitation Act. Equal access to education. Case precedent. National Federation of the Blind v. Target Corp. 2006. Question 9. During a heated legal dispute where multiple parties have conflicting interests, a hotel denies room reservations to a person with a service dog, citing an internal policy prohibiting animals. The customer explains that the dog is a trained service animal, but the hotel insists on enforcing its policy. Under the ADA, what is the hotel required to do? A. The hotel must allow the service animal unless it poses a direct threat or causes fundamental alteration to services. B. The hotel can refuse service if its policy is applied equally to all guests. C. The hotel can charge an additional cleaning fee for accommodating the service animal. D. The hotel is only required to allow service animals if the owner provides documentation proving the animal's training. Answer A. The hotel must allow the service animal unless it poses a direct threat or causes fundamental alteration to services. Explanation. Under Title Rome, the EDA, places of public accommodation such as hotels must allow service animals unless they create a direct threat or fundamental alteration to services. Option was correct. The ADA overrides hotel policies, and a service dog must be permitted unless it causes significant disruption. Option B incorrect. Equal enforcement of a no-pet policy does not justify denying access to a service animal. Option C incorrect. Service animals cannot be subject to extra fees. Lentini Cal Center for the Arts, 2004. Option D incorrect. Under the ADA, businesses cannot require documentation for a service animal. Relevant law 42 U.S.C. SS 12182 EDA Title Roman III. Public accommodations and service animals. Dutch Service Animal Guidelines. Question 10. While balancing ethical considerations and legal mandates, a hospital refuses to provide an SL interpreter for a deaf patient during a complex medical procedure, stating that written notes are sufficient. The patient sues under the ADA. What is the hospital's legal obligation? A. The hospital must provide effective communication, which may include an ASL interpreter if necessary. B. The hospital can refuse an interpreter if it provides written communication instead. C. The ADA does not apply to private hospitals. D. The patient must bring their own interpreter. Answer A. The hospital must provide effective communication, which may include an ASL interpreter if necessary. Explanation. Under Edit Title Rome and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, hospitals must ensure effective communication, which may require an ASL interpreter. Options are correct. Hospitals must provide auxiliary aids, including interpreters, when needed for effective communication. Option B incorrect. Written notes are not always sufficient for medical procedures. Option C incorrect. All hospitals must comply with Aid and Rehabilitation Act standards. Option D incorrect. The burden is on the hospital, not the patient, to provide accommodations. Question 11. During a major transformation where existing methods are being replaced with more advanced alternatives, an organization introduces a new digital verification system for identity authentication. Employees raise concerns that the system disproportionately fails for individuals with darker skin tones. What legal and ethical obligation does the organization have? A. The organization must ensure the system does not create disparate impact and make necessary adjustments. B. The organization is not responsible for algorithmic bias if it purchased the system from a third-party vendor. C. The employees must provide conclusive statistical evidence before the organization is required to act. D. The organization could continue using the system as long as it is accurate for the majority of users. Answer A. The organization must ensure the system does not create disparate impact and make necessary adjustments. Explanation. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title Omen, and EDA regulations prohibit employment discrimination, including the use of biased technology that disproportionately impacts protected groups. Option is correct. Employers must ensure that new technologies do not create discriminatory effects and must adjust their systems accordingly. Option B incorrect. Third-party technology vendors do not absolve the employer from liability if the system results in discrimination. Option C incorrect. A disparate impact claim does not require conclusive proof, but rather a showing of disproportionate harm to a protected class. Option D incorrect. Majority accuracy is not a defense when a system disproportionately harms certain groups. Relevant law. Title Omen of the Civil Rights Act 42 U.S.C. SS 2002 EOP. Guidance on AI bias in hiring. Question 12. While analyzing the root causes of sequential problems in workplace safety, an industrial facility identifies that a new scheduling system leads to excessive overtime for night shift workers. This has resulted in an increase in workplace injuries. Under federal labor laws, what obligation does the employer have? A. The employer must review and adjust work schedules to reduce safety risks. B. The employer can continue current scheduling practices since employees agreed to overtime. C. The employer is only responsible if the injuries result in lost workdays. D. The employees must file an official complaint before the employer is required to act. Answer A. The employer must review and adjust work schedules to reduce safety risks. Explanation. The Occupational Safety and Health Act (OSHA) mandates that employers provide a safe workplace. Option was correct. The employer must proactively identify and mitigate workplace hazards, including those related to fatigue and excessive overtime. Option B incorrect. Employee consent does not eliminate the employer's duty to provide a safe working environment. Option C incorrect. Employers are liable for any unsafe conditions, even if they do not result in lost workdays. Option D incorrect. OSHA compliance is mandatory regardless of whether employees file complaints. Relevant law. Occupational Safety and Health Act 29 U.S.C. SS 654 OSHA Guidelines on Workplace Fatigue. Question 13. In a high-stakes environment where multiple challenges must be managed simultaneously, a hospital implements a new patient data sharing system. However, several employees express concerns about potential HIPAA violations. What should the hospital do first to ensure compliance? A. Immediately suspend the system until a full compliance review is conducted. B. Ensure that the system has encryption and access controls in place. C. Continue using the system but provide training to employees about its features. D. Require employees to sign a waiver acknowledging their responsibility for data security. Answer. B. Ensure that the system has encryption and access controls in place. Explanation. HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, requires covered entities to protect patient data through technical safeguards. Optional incorrect. Full suspension is unnecessary if compliance measures are implemented. Option B correct. Encryption, access controls, and audit logs are fundamental HIPAA compliance requirements. Option C incorrect. Training alone is insufficient if the system lacks proper security measures. Option D incorrect. Waivers do not remove the organization's legal responsibility for HIPAA compliance. Relevant law. HIPAA Security Rule 45 CFR Part 164 Subpart C. Question 14. While managing a hybrid approach where timing issues create inefficiencies, a financial institution struggles with delays in processing transactions due to a mix of automated and manual verification steps. What is the best approach to address this issue while maintaining compliance? A. Remove manual verification entirely to increase efficiency. B. Implement a risk-based approach that automates low-risk transactions while keeping manual verification for high-risk cases. C. Reduce the number of required approvals for all transactions. D. Rely on employees to manually flag transactions that seem suspicious. Answer. B. Implement a risk-based approach that automates low-risk transactions while keeping manual verification for high-risk cases. Explanation. Financial regulations require fraud prevention while allowing efficient transactions. Optional incorrect. Removing all manual verification could increase fraud risks. Option B, correct. A risk-based approach balances efficiency with compliance by automating low-risk cases while manually reviewing high-risk ones. Option C, incorrect. Reducing approvals can increase risk exposure. Option D, incorrect. Relying solely on employees without structured guidelines increases human error. Relevant law. Bank Secrecy Act 31 U.S.C. SS 5311 Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council (EFIC) Guidelines. Question 15. During an emergency response where multiple areas are impacted, a company must decide how to allocate resources for restoring critical operations after a cyber attack. What should be prioritized first? A. Restoring customer-facing systems to prevent reputation damage. B. Securing sensitive data and ensuring regulatory compliance. C. Communicating with stakeholders before assessing the damage. D. Investigating the source of the attack before restoring any systems. Answer. B. Securing sensitive data and ensuring regulatory compliance. Explanation. Cybersecurity frameworks prioritize data protection and compliance over external-facing concerns. Option was incorrect. Customer-facing systems can be restored later once data security is ensured. Option B, correct. Securing data first prevents further breaches and ensures regulatory compliance. Option C, incorrect. Communication is important but should not precede data security actions. Option D, incorrect. Investigations are necessary but should occur simultaneously with security restoration. Relevant law. General Data Protection Regulation (EDPR) and U.S. Data Breach Notification Laws. Question 16. When developing a solution that must address opposing needs, a city government is planning a new zoning policy that balances economic growth with environmental protection. What is the most effective approach? A. Prioritize economic development and compensate for environmental harm later. B. Implement strict environmental regulations with no exceptions. C. Develop a framework where business incentives align with sustainability goals. D. Allow businesses to self-regulate their environmental impact. Answer. C. Develop a framework where business incentives align with sustainability goals. Explanation. Effective policy design aligns incentives rather than choosing one priority over another. Option was incorrect. Reactive approaches increase long-term costs. Option B, incorrect. Overly rigid regulations can hinder economic development. Option C, correct. Incentive-based policies encourage sustainable practices without harming business growth. Option D, incorrect. Self-regulation is unreliable and often leads to environmental damage. Relevant policy example: green building incentives and smart growth policies. Question 17. While updating traditional approaches where interconnections between different business units are weak, a company struggles with poor communication between its finance and operations departments. What is the best way to improve efficiency? A. Require finance and operations to hold daily status meetings. B. Implement an integrated enterprise resource planning system. C. Hire a liaison to mediate between the two departments. D. Maintain separate reporting structures but increase email communication. Answer. B. Implement an integrated enterprise resource planning system. Explanation. Systems provide real-time data sharing and integration between departments. Option was incorrect. Frequent meetings do not solve structural communication problems. Option B, correct. An system improves transparency, efficiency, and coordination. Option C, incorrect. A liaison can help, but it is not a structural solution. Option D, incorrect. Email alone is insufficient for improving interdepartmental processes. Relevant business practice: SAP ERP and Oracle NetSuite integration. Question 18. In a situation where formal requirements conflict with practical constraints, a manufacturer faces delays because compliance testing takes longer than production timelines allow. What is the best approach? A. Expedite production and submit compliance reports later. B. Develop a parallel compliance and production workflow. C. Focus on meeting deadlines first, then adjusting processes as needed. D. Outsource compliance testing to reduce internal bottlenecks. Answer: B. Develop a parallel compliance and production workflow. Explanation: parallel workflows allow compliance and production to proceed without delays. Option is incorrect. Compliance must be ensured before distribution. Option B correct. Parallel workflows integrate compliance within production. Option C incorrect. Ignoring compliance deadlines risks legal penalties. Option D incorrect. Outsourcing may not address core inefficiencies. Relevant law: FDA compliance and ISO 9001 manufacturing standards. Question 19. While investigating a complicated issue between different regulatory agencies, a company finds conflicting guidance from federal and state laws. How should it proceed? A. Follow state law as it is more specific. B. Follow federal law as it supersedes state regulations. C. Consult legal counsel to determine the appropriate course of action. D. Choose the less restrictive regulation to maximize flexibility. Answer: C. Consult legal counsel to determine the appropriate course of action. Explanation: conflicts between state and federal laws require case-specific legal interpretation. Option incorrect. State law does not always take precedence. Option B incorrect. Federal preemption depends on the law in question. Option C correct. Legal counsel ensures compliance in complex regulatory matters. Option D incorrect. Choosing the less restrictive option may lead to non-compliance. Question 20. When developing a solution that must address opposing needs, a software company must balance security with ease of access for users. What is the best approach? A. Prioritize security over usability to ensure data protection. B. Focus on usability and simplify security features to avoid user frustration. C. Implement adaptive security measures that adjust based on risk level. D. Let users decide their own security settings. Answer: C. Implement adaptive security measures that adjust based on risk level. Explanation: adaptive security ensures protection without unnecessarily restricting user access. Option incorrect. Excessive security may frustrate users. Option B incorrect. Weak security exposes vulnerabilities. Option C correct. A risk-based approach maintains both security and usability. Option D incorrect. User-controlled security may lead to unsafe settings. Relevant cybersecurity practice: zero trust security and adaptive authentication. Question 21. When scaling up operations that experience significant fluctuations in demand, a logistics company struggles with inventory shortages during peak seasons. What is the most effective strategy to maintain operational efficiency? A. Increase inventory levels year-round to avoid shortages. B. Implement a demand forecasting system to adjust inventory dynamically. C. Reduce product variety to simplify inventory management. D. Rely on suppliers to manage stock levels on behalf of the company. Answer: B. Implement a demand forecasting system to adjust inventory dynamically. Explanation: demand forecasting helps companies predict peak periods and optimize inventory. Option incorrect. Stockpiling leads to unnecessary storage costs during low demand periods. Option B correct. Using predictive analytics optimizes inventory without excess costs. Option C incorrect. Reducing product variety could hurt customer satisfaction. Option D incorrect. Outsourcing stock management may reduce control over inventory. Relevant business strategy: just-in-time JIT inventory and AI-based demand forecasting. Question 22. During a seamless transition where continuity must be maintained, a company is migrating to a cloud-based system. What is the best way to ensure minimal disruption to operations? A. Perform the transition all at once to minimize transition time. B. Implement the transition in phases while running both old and new systems. C. Migrate data first, then shift all operations at once. D. Conduct the migration after business hours without a detailed backup plan. Answer: B. Implement the transition in phases while running both old and new systems. Explanation: phased implementation reduces risks and allows troubleshooting. Option incorrect. A full transition at once increases failure risks. Option B correct. Running both systems in parallel ensures stability. Option C incorrect. Only migrating data at first may not address software compatibility issues. Option D incorrect. A backup plan is crucial in case of unexpected failures, relevant at practice, hybrid cloud migrations, and DevOps strategies. Question 23. While examining inconsistencies across various units, a healthcare provider notices discrepancies in how patient records are updated. What is the best course of action? A. Standardize record-keeping procedures across all units. B. Allow each department to manage records according to its needs. C. Implement random audits but avoid procedural changes. D. Restrict access to patient records to fewer employees. Answer A. Standardize record-keeping procedures across all units. Explanation. Standardization reduces errors and ensures compliance with healthcare regulations. Option equals or correct. Standardized procedures prevent inconsistencies. Option B incorrect. Allowing departments to create their own rules leads to errors. Option C incorrect. Audits alone do not resolve procedural issues. Option D incorrect. Restricting access may slow down operations unnecessarily. Relevant law. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. Question 24. In an environment where different components must interact seamlessly, a manufacturing plant faces machine downtime due to delays in coordinating maintenance schedules. What is the best way to address this? A. Require all machines to undergo maintenance at the same time. B. Use predictive maintenance technology to schedule repairs dynamically. C. Conduct maintenance only when machines fail. D. Rotate machines in and out of production randomly for servicing. Answer B. Use predictive maintenance technology to schedule repairs dynamically. Explanation. Predictive maintenance minimizes downtime by scheduling service before failures occur. Option 1 incorrect. Simultaneous maintenance disrupts production. Option B correct. AI-driven maintenance schedules improve efficiency. Option C incorrect. Waiting for failure increases costs and risks. Option D incorrect. Random servicing is ineffective. Relevant industry standard. ISO 55000 Asset Management Standards. Question 25. While managing a hybrid approach where timing issues create bottlenecks, a project team struggles to align remote and in-office workflows. What is the best strategy? A. Require all employees to work in the office for consistency. B. Use collaboration tools and set clear asynchronous work expectations. C. Allow employees to manage their own schedules without oversight. D. Hold daily mandatory virtual check-ins for all team members. Answer B. Use collaboration tools and set clear asynchronous work expectations. Explanation. Effective remote collaboration relies on clear workflows and digital tools. Option was incorrect. Forcing in-office work defeats the purpose of hybrid models. Option B correct. Asynchronous collaboration enhances flexibility and efficiency. Option C incorrect. Lack of structure leads to delays. Option D incorrect. Excessive meetings reduce productivity. Relevant business strategy. Agile remote work management. Question 26. In a case where multiple parties have different objectives, a city council must decide on the location of a new public transportation hub. What is the best approach to balance competing interests? A. Select a location based on majority vote. B. Conduct a thorough impact analysis and involve community stakeholders. C. Choose the lowest cost option regardless of location. D. Prioritize business district needs over residential concerns. Answer B. Conduct a thorough impact analysis and involve community stakeholders. Explanation. Inclusive decision-making ensures long-term success. Option was incorrect. Majority rule alone may overlook key concerns. Option B correct. Stakeholder involvement leads to informed decisions. Option C incorrect. Cost-only decisions ignore accessibility concerns. Option D incorrect. Favoring businesses may create public resistance. Relevant policy example. Sustainable urban mobility plans sumpt. Question 27. While investigating a complicated issue between different business units, a company finds that sales and customer support teams have conflicting priorities. What is the best way to resolve this? A. Establish shared performance metrics aligned with company goals. B. Let each team work independently without interference. C. Increase individual bonuses for each department to boost performance. D. Rotate employees between departments to encourage understanding. Answer A. Establish shared performance metrics aligned with company goals. Explanation. Shared performance metrics align incentives. Options was all correct. Cross-functional goals encourage collaboration. Option B incorrect. Lack of coordination creates inefficiencies. Option C incorrect. Competing incentives can worsen conflicts. Option D incorrect. Employee rotation may disrupt expertise. Relevant business strategy. Key performance indicators, KPIs and balanced scorecards. Question 28. During an emergency response where multiple areas are impacted, the hospital must allocate limited medical resources effectively. What is the best strategy to prioritize patient care? A. Treat patients on a first come, first served basis. B. Focus only on patients with the highest survival chances. C. Use a triage system to assess and prioritize cases based on urgency. D. Distribute resources evenly among all incoming patients. Answer C. Use a triage system to assess and prioritize cases based on urgency. Explanation. A triage system ensures that the most critical patients receive immediate care, optimizing survival rates. Option was incorrect. First come, first served does not account for medical urgency. Option B incorrect. Focusing only on high survival cases may overlook critical but treatable patients. Option C correct. Triage maximizes resource efficiency and saves the most lives. Option D incorrect. Equal distribution ignores varying medical needs. Relevant emergency protocol. Start triage, simple triage and rapid treatment. Question 29. While updating traditional approaches where interconnections between different teams are weak, a company struggles to improve collaboration. What is the best solution? A. Implement cross-departmental meetings and joint performance goals. B. Allow teams to continue working independently. C. Assign a single department to oversee collaboration. D. Increase the number of internal reports for accountability. Answer A. Implement cross-departmental meetings and joint performance goals. Explanation. Collaboration improves when teams share objectives and communicate regularly. Optionals are correct. Cross-functional meetings help break silos. Option B incorrect. Maintaining independence weakens teamwork. Option C incorrect. Centralized control may reduce flexibility. Option D incorrect. More reports add bureaucracy without solving the root problem. Relevant business strategy, agile and cross-functional collaboration. Question 30. In a multi-location scenario where consistency requirements are critical, a retail chain notices that customer service varies significantly between stores. What is the best way to ensure uniform service quality? A. Develop standardized training programs for all employees. B. Allow each store to handle customer service based on local needs. C. Rotate employees between locations to balance skill levels. D. Focus customer service improvements only on underperforming stores. Answer A. Develop standardized training programs for all employees. Explanation. Consistency in customer service improves brand reputation and customer satisfaction. Optionals are correct. Standardized training ensures all employees follow the same service protocols. Option B incorrect. Local autonomy may lead to inconsistencies. Option C incorrect. Employee rotation is disruptive and does not guarantee consistency. Option D incorrect. Focusing only on weak stores ignores system-wide improvements, relevant business practice, customer service standardization and employee training programs.